Hi, I'm Alex. Welcome to my channel. Before we start today's video, I wanted to give a brief little update because I'm super excited. I finished the first draft of my novel. This would be the vampire novel, though. The first draft of Blood Brothers is done completely, which means now I'm going to set it aside for a little bit just so I can give my mind a break from that story and I can come back at it with a clearer view. But I am so excited. With that out of the way, the subject of today's video is kind of connected to my to the novel, but in the vaguest sense of that it's fantasy. And that's the fantasy tropes I really like. A lot of them, I mean, they're tropes for a reason. It's cliche, but not necessarily in a bad way. They're cliche for a reason, yes. But done right, it can be really entertaining. So, the first cliche or trope, depending on how you want to word it, that I really like is the one big evil guy. You know, the Sauron or but you know, that despite the fact there may be an evil army here or something, there's one guy. Now, I like this because in books like, especially our more modern fantasy books, there's not always this clear-cut line between who's the bad guy and who's not. But if you have that one bad guy, you know, no matter what, this dude is bad. And if you side with him, more than likely you're not on the good side. And sometimes I just want those clear-cut lines. Like, I love a anti-hero messing with both sides kind of thing, but sometimes I just want to read that clear-cut line. And while I don't agree with the bad guy's point of view, because let's be real, if you're doing that clear-cut line of bad guy, he's really bad. I tend to find those characters really fascinating because even if they're doing bad for the sake of being a bad person, there's usually a reason behind it. And to me, they just tend to be way more interesting than the morally gray. The next trope, and this one is so prevalent that it almost is not even just a trope, but like a standard. Also, I have a new setup I'm trying, so if I'm looking off, it's just me checking the setup and a cat trying to knock things over. Meow. Are you gonna get up here and be in another video? Maybe. So, the next trope, as I said, has pretty much become a standard versus a trope. And that's using essentially Europe as your fantasy realm. Tolkien's maps and everything were always based on Europe. When you see elves, and it's all based on that. But most people use Europe as their basis for their fantasy realm. I like this because unless I'm looking for, like, if I'm just looking for a comfort read within the fantasy realm, using Europe as the basis, I already have a basic understanding of the realm. It's good. Like, I understand the geography and I kind of understand that basis already. So I don't have to try and understand it. I already do. I also don't think it's necessarily as big a deal as people make it. Not to say that we shouldn't. I would love to see more fantasy set in other places, because let's be real, that Renaissance, medieval, it happened in a lot more places. Why can't a fantasy be set in the why did I air quote that? The Antarctic. Or why can't there be a fantasy where they use the basis of Brazil? I don't see a reason we can't. I would love to see that. Actually, that would be really fascinating. Someone get on that. By using something we're all familiar with, it provides a sort of level of comfort, especially if you're not trying to overthink your reading. The next trope, the quest. The one quest. We all know the books that do that. Lord of the Rings does it. I mean, that's, again, that's always going to be my first draw. But most fantasy books have that one quest. I think, and a lot of it comes down to what is both a comfort and a quick draw. By having that quest, you know where the story kind of is going, what the ultimate goal is. So while you may go off to save this person or have this side adventure here, or it can take all these different turns, but in the end, you know that the ultimate goal is this one thing. So it's kind of easier, at least for me, to accept and go along these little side stories because I know we're going to get back to this main thing, and I can more easily keep focus because I have that understanding that all of the other things are going to relate back to this main thing. The final trope, and I'm not sure, look, to be honest, I had to look these up because I'm so used to them that I didn't realize they were kind of tropes, but they called it the rise of the servant. And what this basically means is that by the end, the servant or the nobody pauper or whatever, this person that in the scope of the realm was nobody, suddenly is the hero or the king or whatever. You see this in the Arthurian legend when Arthur was a child. He was just literally, he was basically a no one. Arthur was just a squire to a knight. The knight, well known. Him, he was just some little punk kid. No one knew who he was. No one cared who he was. But by the end of his story, wasn't he something? Yes, he was. But by the end of his story, he was a king. Trained by Merlin. You see this in other stories. It's a little less obvious in some stories than others, but generally, going to my favorite of Lord of the Rings, Frodo was just a hobbit. He was a wealthy hobbit, but he was just a hobbit. By the end of his book, everyone knew who he was. This is becoming, I don't know if it's becoming less of a thing or if it's just they're getting more subtle with it. I like the message that tends to come with this trope. Basically, it doesn't matter where you start, that you can be someone special. You can become someone important. It doesn't matter what your origin is, or origins are, whatever. You can be or end up somewhere better than what your original circumstances were. Now, arguably, say in Lord of the Rings, for Frodo, that wasn't necessarily a better place. It was just, he kind of net zeroed out for the life he wanted. But it also tends to be one of those things that says you don't always recognize your own worth. You can't always see what you're meant to be or what you are. But if you keep going and you keep fighting for it, you are something worth celebrating. And to be perfectly honest, some people need to hear that. So having it in this fantasy format makes it easier to read, and at the same time provides that message. And sometimes it's just a fun thing to read, to see someone's journey like that. These are my favorite tropes. It's not all of them because I don't necessarily, like I said, I don't recognize things as tropes, to be perfectly honest. I had to go look it up. I honestly think tropes are really useful tools. Yeah, they're kind of better if you can keep it more subtle, but they're super useful. They're really quick to get a reader into your story. And to be perfectly honest, there are so many tropes in the fantasy genre that it's almost impossible to avoid them. It's just about how you use them. Tell me in the comments, do you have any favorite tropes? It doesn't even have to be in fantasy. You know, do you have any tropes across the board that you really love, that it's in that book, which means you're gonna read it? Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!